What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am BDLM coming with my buddy J4Y, bringing you episode number 104 of the Dota on Demand podcast. What's going on, man?
I've got the 6.82 blues. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I was dancing a little too excited.
Yeah, that was like a techno rave going on over there.
I'm sorry, I've been bottling it up, Jay. I've been trying to go out and dancing for like the last weeks, okay? And no one wants to go.
Yesterday. And I was so ready.
It's not that I really want to go. It's just like anybody will mention it. And I'm just like, let's do this thing. I just got some.
And then you get to the club
energy.
and you would just stand by the wall and just like maybe snap your finger once every hour or something. Like,
or it's just one of those things where I start and then everybody backs away, and it's not because they're like making room for me because I'm awesome. It's just because they don't want to get hurt, and mostly pity. They're just like trying to shy away from the awkward situation that I am actively generating. Totally reasonable thing to be talking about on the podcast, am I right?
I think so. Doing good over here. I guess I was trying to relate to there. We are going to be discussing, the 6.82, the patch that hit. We obviously went way in depth about literally every single change last week. If you haven't had a chance, or you just saw that number and were intimidated, I suggest you go check it out either on YouTube, Stitcher, whichever method you prefer to listen or watch. It is over 4 hours long warning, so have some time set aside or multiple times broken out through a week. But it's a lot of interesting material and worth looking into. Yeah, for sure.
Although I'll say this chick at work, she's listening to like Game of Thrones on audio tape, which has to be like a year straight of just talking. So I think you guys can make the sacrifice. And I think it's actually really nice how it worked out. So we sort of glazed over the Golden Experience change because we were like, let's take a closer look at this. The patch had just hit right before we did the show. And we're like, oh man, let's take a little bit of time to look over this, mess with some of the changes. And that was one that we weren't like comfortable talking about. And so it's actually going to be the heart of our conversation tonight. But also, in case you guys are tuning in looking for Roro, he had a thing. He had to postpone on us. We will have him on another episode. If you guys haven't stopped by, welcome. If you came here just because of Roro, we appreciate having you guys here. You should also, if you guys are just here normally and have no idea who Roro is for some reason, shame on you. You go check out Simply Dota on YouTube. It's a fantastic channel of different guides and stuff. I was actually looking at his some of his 1v1 matchup guides, which are actually really cool because I suck at mid and can't 1v1.
No fear. At this patch, you shouldn't 1v1 anymore. It's all about group, baby.
Whatever. Yeah, so I guess before we get into the mechanic, I have some things I definitely think are just like awesome that got to mess with a bunch this week, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. First of all pick.
Yes.
Ranked all pick. The Glory? Do you like it? Do you hate it?
When we were going over it last week, I think I pointed out that it was one of my favorite changes of the patch, just in the pub scene because of just how it currently how the meta was with that. When I say meta, I mean waiting around until the other team picked their heroes, and it was just obnoxious. You know, you were like you wanted to play a hero, but you could easily get counter picked. For example, if you pick Pudge mid, they pick OD. Razor into. I don't know why I'm hating on OD all of a sudden, but either way, it was just like so easy for the other team to counter if they just waited. So now with the new way, it's back and forth. It's almost like a draft, kind of is in a way, except that now it's not really one captain picking out everything. It's whoever on your team wants to pick a hero, they can, and you go back and forth until both teams have a full 5 roster. So that way, it's more evenly distributed. It's not like this team picks 5 and this team picks 5. It's one, at a time. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful concept. I think it's the closest they may get it to being as ideal as you can hope for. I don't know what more they could do to make it more balanced because the mode itself is obviously designed or has that flaw in it where it's going to just allow for whatever matchup to happen. So yeah, I like it. I'm in favor.
Yeah, I have to say I like it a lot because, like you said, I think the big thing is you would always see people just like waiting. It was basically we had like a 2-minute planning period instead of the 30 seconds you have now. People would just be like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm gonna wait and see what they do first. And now you have to go back and forth picking, and you can counter pick if you want, or what have you. But I personally, I just find drafts to be really, I don't like them. Like, I am playing super serious, like try hard mode. I'm gonna be really particular if I'm playing in a draft, and I just feel better in all pick. And I was playing some games with Magic Man, and he was like, yeah, I just want to do draft stuff. And I'm like, I'm not about it. He's like, well, I just like it better because you get more control and stuff. I'm like, not, in my opinion, I think it's like just as good now almost if you go to the rank all pick. If you're playing with a bunch of people, it's like everybody gets to pick what they want instead of you having one person that's going to say, this. Okay. I got picked. I played in a game. I did not know ahead of time that it was going to be Captain's Draft. I was real upset about it.
Oh, jeez.
I got picked Ogre Magi by Genobeam. I should have trusted. I should have believed in the Genobeam. He picked me off-lane Ogre Magi. It's like, fine. Whatever.
Was this post-patch?
Yes, it was.
Oh, dear.
And it was actually awesome. It was a lot of fun. I liked playing it. Next level, off-lane Ogre. You should totally go try it out your next pub game. But I just like that it feels like you can play all pick. You're not going to get just like countered super hard. You can try a reasonable amount and get a reasonable result, which I feel like you couldn't necessarily do before.
Yeah, Darian in the chat actually saying he likes it, but he wished they had the same mode for unranked, and I actually like it not being an unranked. The reason being, I feel like if you just want to YOLO random and just whatever your team comp is, that's what it is. I feel like that's what unranked's all about, just trying new things and not worrying about counters or whatnot. I mean, I guess I can see the argument for that because you sometimes still want it to be more of a competitive lineup versus lineup, even if you don't want to play, like you're not up to feeling the MMR change going on. But I don't know. At the same time, I'm okay with it being just ranked because if you truly want to put your try hard pants on, then sign up for ranked and let it fly, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting with the delineation. It's almost like I almost like the idea of the game sort of telling you, like, hey, you should put some thought into this.
Yeah.
So I can see that aspect of
maybe they could make both a variation. Like, they could give you a choice, but then maybe they start running into the issue of having people spread too thin through different queues, and then queue times getting longer.
Yeah.
I could.
I'd rather be all or nothing, I think. Because then it's just like ranked really doesn't matter, right? Like, the idea is just you have a gauge of where you stand on other people, and you're getting matched up against those people. So to a certain extent, it's like it shouldn't really matter if you play, that. And I don't know. It's my opinion on the ranking thing. I think you can do fine and just whatever. You shouldn't be super concerned about whatever your ranking is. Mm-hmm. So, yes. How about these new heroes we get to mess with? Not really new. Well, you know what? I will actually say
they're new.
They are new because we actually had a game, one of the first games played out of the patch, where there was just sort of like this attempt to make these heroes play like they used to, and you just go, the kits are really completely different for both Bloodseeker and Phantom Lancer. You really have to just like reset everything you thought about these heroes, completely forget what they did before, and really just look at their kits now and say what it is that they do and what it provides you. So I know you got to play some Phantom Lancer, my friend. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts on him and his changes against people instead of bots?
I know. I'm actually really surprised. I took the plunge and actually played him in a non-bot game. But it was actually interesting. I know already what I did wrong, which was played him the way I knew him. Playing him in the same style. I tried to make him a split pusher in the late game. Going. I went items I would say still are comfortable on the hero, like drums, diffusal blade. I got a heart later on. Those items I think are still very acceptable on the hero, but it's about playstyle. It's 100% about playstyle with that hero. His illusion duration now being 8 seconds off his own procs, and then 4 seconds when the illusions proc it, are obviously vastly shorter than the previous times. So it's not like the illusions can just hang out by themselves, generate their own army, and just shove down a lane with Radiance and Heart and hope to keep a whole lane at bay. You pretty much have to stay with your Illusion Army if you want it to be a Reckoning Force. If you want it to do actual damage, I feel like, and put pressure on the enemy base. You know, you can keep a lane at bay for sure, but if you want to get to a tier 3 high ground, you need more than just your illusions to do it. So I definitely played it, I feel like, the incorrect way, where I was not with my team as much. He's much more of a brawler in this current stage, I feel like. With his charge, he's able to close gaps so much easier. He doesn't have that, like, I won't even call it like Nature Prophet-esque escapability, where like he'll push a lane and then at the first, you know, notice of harm, like blinks and teleports away. Like he used to kind of be that way with his Doppelwalk, but now with the way he's got Doppelganger going, you really can't escape as easily. Like you can do jukes. It's all about the jukes, which a lot of people have been saying on different things like Reddit and such, that they love the new playstyle with that, because there's a lot more to it than just, oh, I'm invis now. You know, it's you can go down terrain like cliffs and stuff. You can go and over certain objects. You can, you know, obviously it creates 2 illusions in yourself. So there's 3 things. You can make them move different directions. I mean, you've got a lot more potential to fake people out. But at the same time, either way, you're going to end up in that little circle area that you cast Doppelganger on. So at the end of the day, it's a lot easier for teams to find you and kill you. So I like it in a way, but I think, like I said, you have to take it a whole new mindset and play him, I feel like, in a different fashion than you did before.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. I think he feels a lot better, and in general, you know, I don't think anybody liked playing against the Phantom Lancer, because you're always just like, oh, he's going to hit like a critical mass and everything. But the thing that I think is really, again, just going back to this being a brand new hero, right? Notice some people using Doppelganger to create illusions to try to proc more illusions, which one of them does damage. So yeah, okay, I guess you have that chance to do it. But when you look at Juxtapose and you go, okay, you have a 40, 45, and then a 50% chance to proc off heroes when you level up the ability, where it's always a static 8% chance to trigger an illusion off of itself. So it's like, okay, well, clearly you're supposed to be trying to generate these off of your hero. It really is just sort of like a steroid by adding on the illusions, and that's why I think Diffusal is like core critical. Like I really don't see how you would wind up not playing Phantom Lancer with a Diffusal now, just because of that.
Right.
But to me, like, in trying to think of him as a split pusher, because he certainly can't barrel that army down the lane like you're talking about, the one thing you can do, which will get you sort of close to that, is almost playing it like an anti-mage, right? Where if your team's like off doing something and for some reason you don't want to be with them, which I think you, like you said, you should, I think you can fight with them really well now. If you are in a situation where you're sort of in the jungle and you're like, oh, this lane's getting kind of close to the enemy tower, I'm just going to pop into this lane, blow stuff up. I'm going to hit this tower super hard by myself, and people are going to have to react. A lot like Anti-Mage would do. He would just like, oh, okay, I'll farm the jungle, then, oh, I can run out. I'm going to pop Manta style. I'm just going to truck his tower down, and then I'm going to run away. I'm going to blink away. You can sort of do that with the Doppelganger. But the one thing you can do, too, to also sort of, I guess, keep with the old style of Phantom Lancer is if you go Manta style, your Manta style illusions will last long enough that they'll go for several creep waves, or at least an extra creep wave or two, and propagate more illusions, whereas the normal ones that you're creating yourself can't do that. So if you are sort of looking for something like the old play style, I think that's a great way to go. With the bots
still. And bots are totally late game oriented as well, and I love it too. It, like I said, you can play him in a similar fashion. It will never be the same anymore, but you can do similar aspects. He'll still be a great split pusher because of the illusions, and now that they spawn even faster than they did before, with Juxtapose, it's just incredible. I have two interesting things to note here. The first one is more of kind of a funny note. I use a lot of player build, like users that create guides, and then you can select it, of course. So I do that for most heroes just because I'm sort of lazy. I don't follow it to the T, but it's a lot of them are very similar to what I do anyways, so I just kind of select them. But I still have my old PL guide on, and it kept trying to tell me to level Juxtapose at 3. And I'm like, that's actually impossible because it's my ultimate now. So it maintained its name, but is now your ultimate. So if you're wondering why you're trying to follow the guide and it's no longer functioning, that would be why. But also, on a more serious note, we actually discovered, and we had a pretty decent discussion about Doppelganger. And I originally in this game, and I believe we've seen other people do it, use Doppelganger offensively to create the illusions to do quote unquote more damage. Because you in your mind, you're like, oh, 2 more of me, maybe this will help push the lane faster. While they of course do help you generate illusions faster, like you said, juxtaposed chance is really high as it is. Up to 50% last rank. I mean, every other attack you're generating an illusion. But the doppelgangers that you spawn, one does no damage, the other does 20% and takes 600% more damage. So the time you spent, that even it's just a second, almost feels like if you just got one more attack in, would probably ultimately deal more damage, or at least would be more efficient than casting doppelganger. What's your thought on that?
I would agree. I really don't think it's worth it. And I think if you're in a situation where you're saying like, oh, I'm fine, unless you know exactly where everybody else is on the map, like, I'm like, oh, I'll use my crazy awesome escape mechanism to just maybe create one extra illusion that is probably going to miss the last hit on this creep anyway or something when you're split pushing. Or, yeah, I'm going to use Doppelganger super offensively to get myself in on top of somebody else. While I think you can do that sometimes, that's what Phantom Rush is for me. Like, that's your gap closer. That's what's supposed to get you on top of heroes. Using it on illusions, you're not really getting much of a benefit out of it, and you're spending your awesome escape mechanism. And yeah, you can get it down to a 10-second cooldown. It's only 50 mana. I get it cheap, but I mean, if you're trying to maximize your player, get the most out of it, you want to make sure that you always have that escape so that you're not feeding anything to the enemy team, especially with when we get to the next part of our show when we're talking about the quote-unquote comeback mechanic.
Yeah.
Putting your only way out on cooldown, if you're ahead, you're going to give like a massive swing to the enemy team if they're able to catch you out.
Yeah, the only time I really like it being offensive is if you build Radiance on them, because obviously those illusions will inherit the Radiance property. So that is like the one example I could foresee you using it to like create the 8-second illusions and just send them in the lane and just let them kind of burn down the creep wave with the Radiance burn some. Like, that makes sense to me in a way. But like if you're like beating on a tower and you take the second to create the 2 illusions just to attack the tower further, doesn't seem efficient at that point. Doesn't seem effective. At that point, you might as well just continue to attack the tower. And then, of course, when a creep wave comes, auto-attack it to create more illusions. Or, of course, you could even use Spirit Lance offensively to create that illusion as well, to kind of, you know, that's a guaranteed illusion when you cast the spell. So that would be like the one time I really like using Doppelganger, is if you want to push out with a Radiance. But beyond that, doesn't seem really effective. And I don't know that Radiance is really his go-to item anymore, to be honest.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like, I don't want to bash your build, but I almost feel like going Radiance is, again, thinking of him the way he used to be, and you're trying to, like, force him into that. Because now you're, like, before, like, your Radiance doesn't stack on itself. The idea is you spread it out over an area. So if you have illusions that you can create a couple and you send them over here, then they're farming the creep wave. Or you can send them into the jungle and try to farm that way. Or you can make sure they're spread out across the team fight to make sure you're doing maximum damage. Now it's just like, okay, me and all the illusions that are right here with me, that when I use Doppelganger, they're going to reposition. They're all just overlapping. And so I don't think that it's a great idea, especially because now you have Phantom Rush that's getting you into fights. It's putting you in the heart of them. I would rather get like Drum's Diffusal, because I think that's going to actually, that's the item now that gives your illusions the most benefit, and I think takes advantage of that property of the hero.
Absolutely. So it's just an interesting way for people to start interpreting it, is you know, try to leave the mindset, and with Bloodseeker when we get into him too, leave the mindset that you had, leave whatever thoughts you had about him, shoot him right out the window, because you've really got to take on a whole new outlook. And while, sure, I could build Radiance, Heart, Diffusal, whatever, and win a game with it, but it doesn't mean that it's the optimal build anymore. There's other ways to look, and we're just kind of just beginning to play this hero in this patch. So there's going to be a lot more development along the way, and we may see things that we didn't expect from pros or other players when it eventually hits Captain's Mode. Of course, we don't know how long this period of non-Captain's Mode will last. I honestly don't foresee it being too long. Just because, I mean, yes, I don't have a lot of experience with it, so it's, take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I don't feel like he's unbalanced. I don't feel like... Now, of course, I've heard from a couple friends. I've heard from some casters that stream. They're like, oh, yeah, that hero is totally broken. Oh, Bloodseeker, totally broken. It's more like not a lot of experience with it. So things that we're scared of, we just want to just say, oh, broken, ban it, or get rid of it, But in reality, it's something that you could just adapt to. So, yeah, I personally don't see a large issue with him coming into the game. I think he's fine. But do you foresee still a long waiting period for them to bring him in?
I don't think so. Maybe you give it a patch or so, but I think that they could almost do like a Legion Commander-esque thing, and you go like, okay, let's adjust this, and then let him loose. And see how it goes. I mean, Doppelganger is super strong. He's a punchy aggro hero, and he has a great escape, but I'm fine with him. I don't know. Maybe, again, I've played with him a couple times. I haven't been against him too often, so to try to say how I feel tracing him down and what have you and trying to play against that hero, maybe I need to see that side of the coin. But I think he feels pretty darn good.
And I was going to say, the things that countered him before still more or less counter him. Earthshaker, of course. Anything with a massive AoE. In fact, I'd say he's almost easier to deal with in that kind of sense. Because it's not like you're battling his illusions all day now. Now you're just battling him, and while he is stronger in that punchy-feely kind of way, at least it's like you can take him on in a fight and not worry about going through all these massive, long-duration illusions that are just keeping you at bay. So I think, if anything, this just makes it more of a balanced approach to the hero.
Yeah, I think so. I would much rather see him like this than the old way, because, for whatever you might think is stupid or obnoxious about this hero, just remember that if you were behind in a game and there was a Heart Butterfly Phantom Lancer, and that might have had like a diffusal blade on him as well, you're sitting there just like trying to right-click these illusions down. They're just raping you, just raping you sideways, and you can't do anything about it. The hero, he's back in his side of the jungle. He doesn't even know what's happening. They're on a click at the enemy fountain. He has no idea what's going on, and you're losing to that. So, it just you gotta appreciate what you got and maybe adjust to the new feeling. But and also, just I guess as a final note, and just to go back to the sort of thinking of these heroes as a new hero, this one in particular like had stat changes all around, losing some of the agility per level, gaining agility as a base amount, so better early, worse scaling on his illusions. So I just think that, especially when you start seeing stuff like that, you see a kit rework, you see stat rework your interpretation of the hero, and don't try to cling to the way that the hero was seen previously. But on to Bloodseeker, because this hero is just crazy. People have sort of, I think, highlighted a lot of the sort of silly things you can do with it, which we totally did. We did Zeus, and we blood surged him, and we just made it rain on the hose. Like, lightning was everywhere. I'm pretty sure I was actually playing with Genobeam.
Zeus, Skywrath. I was Skywrath, and Genobeam was Zeus.
Yeah, and I was like, guys, support Bloodseeker. And they're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, no, we got this. Don't worry. And we just, it was like, he's like, search me. Okay. And he's just like, ulti, refresh, ulti, everything's dead. It was great. It was so much fun. But of course, we were against a sniper, too. And so he started to realize that this was basically what we were winning the game off of. And they had wards out. And so they would see that he was blood surged, and he's like, assassinate. You're at a third health. It's like, oh, baby. That's a lot of damage. It's a huge swing, a really neat ability. What are your thoughts on the hero, sir?
It's so hard to give a full interpretation on him. Like, I want a lot more experience with him on both my team and the enemy team to get a really good feeling for it. I saw him on, obviously, my team. Like I said, I was in your lineup. And it was it was so dramatically noticeable, the enhancement. And like I said, I was playing support Skywrath, so of course I give the magic penetration from my ability, and then you surge. So the amount of magic damage we did to some target, I believe we said it was a Storm Spirit coming in, and I silenced him because that's what Skywrath does. And then you surge Zeus. His ultimate did 90% of Storm Spirit's health from full, and this was like late game. This wasn't like level 6 shenanigans. So I was like, how did that ult hit so hard? And I'm like, oh, we're stacking the deeps. We're stacking the deeps. And of course he died like immediately after. But just like, this almost kind of brings me back to a different thought of, remember the minus armor teams of the old days? Where you go Shadow Fiend, Vengeful Spirit, Slardar, and you would just like kill Roshan in 1 second, and you would like, in team fights, it would be like, you know, you choose one hero, they're dead. Like, it was just like insane amount of minus armor. This guy kind of works like that, but for any lineup, because he's enhancing literally all of your abilities. So, obviously, the pro of that is that you're going to pump out a lot of damage. The con, which I think in that game we saw a lot of as well, was it's a gift and a curse. You know, I remember getting surged in one of the fights, and I got to drop my ulti. I made it rain as well, and I was like, oh, how exciting. Storm Spirit saw me surged, jumped onto my face, and like two-shot me. And, you know, so it has its ups, but it has its downs. And of course, when I died, that healed Storm Spirit too. So it's like, it can be a nice boon, but you have to be careful with it, because it can also cost you the fight if you use it at the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think is like so cool about this hero. Is I even say like Blood Rage, pardon me, not Surge, is like clearly like the silliest, most ridiculous thing ever, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But I like really am about the Blood Right. Like, that spell I think is amazing to me, because it has a 1500 range and a 600 radius. So really, you're talking about being able to hit people that are 1800 range away if they're standing on the edge of it or if they get held there. And because of the way you can work Blood Right by Blood Raging yourself, you can really do a lot of damage with that. It's a huge AoE. It's a long duration silence. I think that even just that, you know, even if they wind up scaling down Blood Rage or they wind up changing it, I really enjoy the Blood Right change. And especially, it just feels like it's something that fits really well with them too, because you're rupturing somebody, they're going to stand still, so you're going to pop the Blood Right, so they're going to take the damage and be silenced off that. So it's I think a really intelligent design, because, you know, you really not going to have people that are like, oh, you know, just regularly running away from Rupture. So most people are just going to stand there, and then they're going to hope for the best. So now, being intelligent against Rupture is now punished by Blood Right. And even going to try to help somebody that's ruptured puts you in danger of Blood Right. And I think that that's just really, really cool.
Exactly. He's got something that's making them not want to just stand still. You know, in the past, it was like you bought a Force Staff because you wanted them to move, and they weren't going to do it on their own. But the other thing I noticed that's really noticeable, that at first I like kind of read when we were going over it and was like, all right, that's fine, is the fact that Rupture is 12 seconds at rank 1. I, at first, was not so aware of it. It was 7, 8, 9 originally. Now 12 right off the bat. That 5-second difference makes all the world, in my opinion. Like, of course, the rank 1, the damage isn't extreme, so you can do a little movement. But when he hits 6 and he gets that gank going, you know, especially if you're near a tower, that gives a lot of time for support to come in. It gives a lot of time for someone to move over if they were out of the lane or doing anything. 12 seconds is extreme. And it was really difficult, I feel like, to deal. You almost had to stand your ground. And this is what you're saying. You know, at level 6, a lot of times people are putting a lot of points in that Blood Right. So if you've got a rank 3 Blood Right at level 6, and you cast that off, if you're going to hit them with that, it's 200 pure damage. That's a lot of supports or other heroes, almost half their health. So, I don't know. I feel like for me, Rupture being 12 seconds was another actual pretty big change to him.
Yeah, it's true. Rupture is like the thing that I look over, and I think most people probably do at this point, just because it was probably I guess Thirst was the least adjusted of all of his abilities, but considering how crazy Blood Rage and Blood Right are, you go like, oh, okay, Rupture, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no, I think it's really nice. It's something you can't just, try to completely outrun. It's going to be on you forever. You have that early rank. I think just having that source of damage is really nice. I like how, actually, I'm looking at Dota 2 Wiki, and it tells you the amount of damage that it does if you force staff a target. I find that just kind of hilarious, personally, that it's telling you just like, yeah, force staff. Totally. Make it work.
Of course. No, I mean, come on. It's still helping him do what he wants to do. Plus, it also, I mean, force staff on any hero. We said this probably 30 episodes ago. You really could make it work on almost any single hero. Just like, I remember when force staff Wraith King was a thing before Blink got buffed? Like, we had a lot of Wraith Kings that built force staff just so they could initiate with that stun. And it also gave you, of course, the mana pool to help him with his ultimate and having enough mana at all times. Like, I totally remember when Wraith King force staff was maybe not in the pro scene, but at least in the pub scene we played a lot with. I saw a lot of that, so I could foresee it still being useful. Blade Mail, I think we discussed, still has a lot of merit on this hero. He's still a melee that's kind of squishy a lot of the times, and he's going to do a lot of brawling, a lot of fighting, and he's probably going to take a lot of damage in that instance. So even if he Blood Rages himself, it's just amplified damage that you're going to be outputting to the enemies attacking you anyways. So it's just going to do it quicker. So I think all around, maybe not first, but I could definitely see Blade Mail getting picked up a lot on this hero still.
Yeah, I would almost call it core. And here's where we go to Crazy Town, Jay, because I like to turn any hero into support. General Ranger, Zeus. I mentioned briefly that I could see the potential for Bloodseeker support.
Yep.
It's okay. Haters gonna hate. I understand not everybody's on board, but let's, if you wouldn't mind, sir, entertain me a little bit on this. I actually wound up playing support Bloodseeker in the game where you were Skywrath Mage.
Correct.
We were all over the place. We got some early kills using the Blood Right and the Blood Rage. It was actually really nice too because roaming around, even going to mid, like we would go and we had Zeus middle, and we'd get a kill, and Zeus would wind up being like low health. I'm like, Blood Rage, and he would blast hit like 4 creeps, and he's fine all of a sudden. He's like, okay, cool. There's a lot you can do too with healing yourself up just off of like the creeps, but also because it's the last rank, it's a 12-second duration and a 6-second cooldown, so you can have 2 of those puppies running at the same time. So you really can like make somebody take more damage and then amplify somebody else's damage, and then you get the sort of both heal effects out of that to be like a massive heal swing. Here is the thing to me that says that healing or support Bloodseeker is possible. What part of his kit, I believe I may have sort of said this last week too, what part of his kit benefits from him doing more damage or buying damage through items? I guess Blood Rage for saying you're getting percentage amplification if you use it on yourself?
Blood Rage for your Dagon.
Of course.
Besides that, though, in all seriousness, nothing. I agreed with you. This was one of our rare occurrences where I agreed with you on one of your crazy, pot schemes or whatever the heck they're called. It was just like, could you just basically say, hey, Jay, let's do support blank? And I'm like, okay, guess that's what's going on in this game. But with Bloodseeker, I agree with you. He doesn't feel necessary as a core anymore. I think one of his strengths pre-patch was that he could sustain himself in the lane really easily. Get the Quelling Blade, get the shield. You can take hits and you'll just heal off the creeps. You're fine. You'll get 6, you'll gank. Like, that was his thing. He didn't really have great laning presence at all. Essentially, he was waiting till 6 to get kills. Now with his Blood Right, he actually does damage, and he actually provides something to the lane. Not only the silence, but like you said, Blood Rage, enhancing someone else's abilities and damage output. It's like a steroid in a way. So he kind of gives that to his teammates, and I don't know where the farm really enhances him too much, honestly. I don't know that is necessary.
I also say that too because I watch a lot of the core Bloodseekers, and I'm not hating on core Bloodseeker. It's fine, totally. Do your thing, man. But I see a lot of Blade Mail and then S and Ys, And you go, okay, well, why wouldn't you be able to build blade mail as support? Or hear me out, Jay. You go the mech because that's going to give you more. You're adding more value to your team as being able to pick up on the support items. Because really, I think even like with like the Zeus or the Drow, right? You're saying, okay, well, you're able to put this like transitional hero into a support role. Well, now you're maybe losing the value that the support was bringing and just the items that they would buy when they finally got gold. Why not go mech? If you're saying that part of your problem is that you're maybe taking more damage from Blood Rage, get a mech. Now you're tankier. You can pop the mech on yourself. You're only spending mana on Blood Rite and Rupture because Blood Rage costs you nothing.
Yep.
Costs you nothing. So you still can struggle a little bit with mana if you're using Blood Rite a lot, but you can get yourself your Blade Mail still if you want, and then you're fine. You can still run around. You can amplify other people. You can amplify yourself if the situation shows itself. Or you can go a mech. Now you're Thirst. You're running around like crazy. You're going to be able to put yourself in the best position to mech. I actually bought Radavatos in the game that we played, and I've had a couple people tell me like, "Oh, that's weird. It's counterintuitive," because you sort of want people to move with Rupture. To that, I say, most smart people are not going to move for your Rupture, and why are you only thinking about Rupture when you can also be thinking about the fact that once you sort of use Blood Rite and your Blood Rage and Rupture, really you kind of just run around in the team fights. If you kind of just, you lay in your right clicks wherever you can. I think that gives you like something that makes you more durable. It lets you cast Blood Rite more willy-nilly. It also keeps people in Blood Rite if you use it on them. I think that there are a lot of items you can build on this hero because you're getting damage from Thirst and damage from Blood Rage just passively, that you don't have to try to get core items, or you don't need core farm. You can still get good things.
Yeah, and I mean, some people in the chat are bringing up that, I mean, late game, some attack speed's good because he gets that bonus damage from Thirst later on. But still, it's like, it doesn't really warrant enough to make you want to make him a core. Like we said, he can work as a core. There's no question of that. I've seen it happen against me in a couple games I've played. I've seen B-Dumb was playing with us our very first game. He was playing mid Bloodseeker, and he had a lot of kills. I mean, he was going all over the map, getting items, but it wasn't like those items were the reason he was doing so well. It's because of the kit and because of the situation. So it's not really like you can put those items on almost any hero and they could do well, just because it's not like one goes with the other per se. So I don't know. I enjoy him being a support. There maybe needs to be some thought into which lineups do you really want him in. Like, do you like maybe lineups where it's okay to take amplified damage, or lineups where, like we were saying with Zeus or Skyrath, where it's like mega burst and you just like put it on Lion, he ults, that guy is definitely dead. Like you've got some kind of ideas to work through. So I really want to see where that leads to when he eventually gets put into more of a competitive role.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting that we have this hero that you would always think of as like an assassin, a hero that has to stay ahead. He has to buy these core items. He's got to be able to get farm. He's got to be able to kill people so he can get the thirst. And now, even just the fact that I think it's a completely reasonable argument. I think if you said that that's like, oh, that's bad, there's no way that would work, I think is completely null. It totally seems like at least a conversation you can have, and the fact you can do that on a hero that was so specifically pigeonholed to a particular role is really cool. I'm all about it.
Mm-hmm.
On to the just do it. Just say it. Just say it.
On to the next one.
Okay.
Oh, the meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes. Oh, it's the meat and potatoes time. I didn't know. The one thing that I sort of led the show with saying is, we kind of skipped over it because we wanted to sort of get a closer look at the numbers and see how it felt before we talked about it. I'm really glad we did, because who could have foreseen that this sort of a change would be applied to Dota, and I think really gives you a different set of lenses to view really every other patch change through, and that is the change in bounty and area golden experience that takes in team's net worth into consideration when determining how much is given. So that basically, if there's a bigger disparity between the teams, a larger or smaller award is given to you based upon, which side of that coin you're on. It's something that's been changed several times since it's been introduced a week ago to the day. And I honestly, I think that it makes Dota as a whole feel completely different.
Dota 3, you kept calling it that. Little did you know what Dota 3 actually meant. It was changed completely. It's transformed. A lot of people are calling it the rubber band Dota right now, because you roll into your advantage, you take out towers, you build a huge lead, but one team fight, one sour death, a couple sour deaths on your team, and it's all of a sudden completely reversed. The original numbers were extreme. Everyone was complaining about it. There were a very few minority supporters for the changes. The majority seemed to just think it was too much. Players were getting insane amount of gold after just getting 1 or 2 kills, like we said. Even the solo kills were ridiculously high in their value, due to the fact that the change supported the bonus area of effect, essentially. So streaks were high, and for example, if a team had 15,000, 20,000 net worth lead, which happens in a lot of pubs, especially, like we said, you take those towers out, you kind of gank early, you get that huge advantage. All of a sudden, that 6-0 carry or whatever gets killed. He overextends. The other team ended up getting numbers something around 1,500 gold on one hero and 1,200 gold on another, and able to now buy suddenly a huge item that in the previous patch you would get some for sure, but not nearly to that extent. And not only gold, experience is working kind of in a similar fashion. So I guess let's start with, before we get to B, you were against it as well, right?
I hated it. I honestly was like thinking about the future of the show and me playing Dota at one point, because I'm like, this just feels so bad. There was one game where we were actually playing, and we wound up, the other team was just like roaming around like crazy. They were all over the place. They kept picking us off. They get into our base. They overextend, like going for the tier 4s, and we kill 2 of the heroes that were super far ahead, and I'm like, I just saw 950 gold pop up. Wow, there must be a bug in the game. I saw that wrong. Maybe that's like the total that I got, even though it was colored for the hero. And then I look down, I'm like, I have 3,000 gold. I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And so not only that, but even in some of the, I guess the more recent games in B, I've had games where it's just like, oh, we're behind, but they overextend, so we kill them all, and now we, I don't know, buy a whole new item, and then we're like, well, I guess we barrel at their side of the board now. And then we wipe, and then they come barreling down at our side, and you just go back and forth. And the thing that was really painful for me to watch, there was actually a game in the Canada Cup, and I guess because it's almost, to a certain extent, felt like you don't want to be ahead, because that just means that there's more to give away. It was Complexity Game and Sneaky Nick's Assassins, and they just spend the whole game throwing their bodies at one another. It was Kotal Guy and Malt casting. Malt was all about it, because it was just like, oh, things are happening left, right, and center. This is great. Like, there isn't any downtime. We have all this action to cast. Kotal Guy is sitting there. He has a soundboard. He's playing Mortal Kombat music. He, I was so desensitized by everything, because I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what anything that's going on. None of this makes any sense to me. Why are we just mercilessly throwing our bodies at the enemy team and hoping for the best? They play LD. If you watch anything on Beyond the Summit, the sort of like lead-in intro video to anything from BTS has this like little bit at the end from a game that TC was playing Razor, and he's like, they're dead, they're all dead, and he's just playing this while these fights are happening. You're like, why? And then the graphs are just like these bouncing back and forth, because one team would build an advantage, they would wind up feeding it away. It felt really uncomfortable to me, and now that we've had more time, I'm sorry for rambling, now we've had more time to think about it, I am sort of in a position where I understand it, and I understand how a lot of its impact promotes playing better. But at the end of the day, I still have these clowny games of Dota where I do like all this work. You played one yesterday. We're roaming around. We're killing people left, right, and center. We're killing it. It's awesome. And then like one person would die. And you're like, hey guys, how about we settle down? We pump the brakes. Another person would die. You take a bad team fight. You've lost. What do you do?
It's true. It's a challenging thing. It's where you really, to me, it's made me more afraid to play with unknown players, and that's a shame because a lot of Dota 2 in the pub scene is not 5 stacks. A lot of it is either solo queue or going around with 2 or 3 people. I mean, not a lot of people play in 5 stacks, so a lot of it's going to be unknown players, and you have to feel comfortable with them playing a position that's not going to feed. Because like you said, 6.81, even if they were hyper-aggressive, even if they were feeding, yeah, it sucked. And it kind of gave some room for them to come back. But it was nothing like what they gain now. And I think the way I was describing it to one of our friends past couple days was this kind of meta now seems to be like pro group and team fight, and deathball is not even the way I'm really wanting to describe it, because it's not necessarily all about 5, let's push mid and win the game. It's more like, let's not be too far away from each other, because let's say we get that pickoff kill. If it's a solo kill, it's still really nice, but if there's 3 or 4 of you and you get that kill, everyone's in it's a payday for everyone. You know, it's almost like getting that bounty track off and saying, hey, you get some gold, you get some gold, everybody gets boots. You know, it's like, it's just a nice reward. And I mean, 6.82b, I might as well just say what they changed in that, because that was a turning point for a lot of players to almost, I'm going to say, come back to the game. It changed the gold formula, so I'm quickly going to just read at least the one hero one, and I'm not going to do all of them. But the original 6.82 was 40 plus 7 times victim level plus net worth factor times 0.5, okay? The difference in B is 40 plus 7 times victim level plus net worth factor times 0.06. So it went from 0.5 to 0.06, which in percentages, 50% to 6%. Pretty drastic cut. And obviously not as drastic for the multiple hero kills. So it's still very beneficial to have more players in the radius when the kill happens, but it's not nearly as dramatic as it once was. And I think this is what's allowing people to actually accept what Ice Frog had envisioned. And I like how we say Ice Frog, but I'm sure there's like a team of like 20 people sitting down to do these, but it's still Ice Frog, right? It's his game. Let's just give him all the credit for everything that's happening. And all the blame, too. He gets both sides of it. But it really is an interesting way to present the game. Because like I said, I think it's no longer about skirmishes as much. Like, yeah, you can dominate your offlane hero. And you can do what we were doing in our game, like you were describing, where you and I were roaming the map, getting kills, pickoffs, killing it. But if your other people who are getting fed all this net worth, all this experience, are unable to perform at the level they need to later in the game, you could be in serious trouble. And you have to be a lot more cautious. You know, you can't really just get yourself caught out in a bad position. You can't allow those mistakes to happen at least too frequently. Because then, for example, if you're against, in our game, I'm rambling now, it's my turn. We were against a Spectre who had virtually nothing. He got ganked a lot. He was very poor. We let those pickoffs happen. And all of a sudden, Spectre had a Manta. And we're like, oh, that sucks. Okay. Well, 10 minutes later, few more deaths, few more pickoffs. He has a heart. Where are these items coming from? He was just broke. And now he is like a late-game farm Spectre. And we couldn't finish the game because of that. So it's a lot more about caution, I'd say, in the later parts of the game, but early game can still be an aggressive brawl if you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is what was most painful in some of the games I played, because there were some, like, I went on like an 8-game losing streak in this patch, and I was really, I normally don't take things like that super bad if I know why it happened. Then I go, well, this is what we got to do different. That's really unfortunate. whatever. But I was getting really frustrated because I'm like, I just don't understand what is doing this, or like where it was that this huge swing came from. And some of the early games, and even the one that we recently played, like you said, we did all this stuff. We're buying smokes, putting them on cooldown the whole early game. We're going around, we're making all these great plays, we're setting up kills for other people. But then these small things of people being caught out would wind up throwing the game. And before in 8-1, one of the episodes we had, I was mentioning, like, I really liked when I was playing all my games as Venomancer, actually. We'd have a lot of games where we'd take all these outer towers and we'd back off. We'd be like, whatever. We'd let the other team sort of come back. We'd space out. You might have somebody get picked off here and there. You go, hey, boys, how about we tighten up the belt? We go back to work. We try to push high ground. Sometimes it work, But now it's like if you take a bunch of stuff, if you build up that net worth and then you just sort of lay back, you just go back to farming the side lanes. Maybe you just feel like going and farm the enemy jungle a little bit, you'll probably be fine. You can't do it because if multiple heroes catch you, you are going to swing the game in the opposite direction. It's no longer, oh, I'm a support, whatever, I want to go place that ward, because it's based off your team net worth. Every kill matters. And so it's like you need to, if you build up an advantage, you have to make sure that you are like dead bolting down that advantage. Okay, let's place wards here. Let's make sure that this is what we're doing. And so it's painful to me in these pub games where you go, I did all this work, I did all this stuff, and these other people might be messing up, and maybe I'll get caught out here and there, and that is what is throttling the game in the other direction. But at the same time, it's, hey, you have to play smarter, you have to play as a team, you have to realize when you're too far out. And that is like the only thing that makes me not slam my head directly into a desk. Because at the end of the day, the game is telling you, hey, you have to take it more seriously. You have to stop sucking.
With great power comes great responsibility. There's nothing to fear but fear itself, BLM. And your carry. Those are the two things to fear. It's making me want to play 5-6, like I said, a lot more often. Just so I have trust, or I can at least yell at the person I know to say, hey, stop doing that. Like, get back here and let's work together to get this objective so they're not overextended. Or it almost makes you want to maybe even itemize slightly different than you would in the past. For example, I'm not going to call him out by name, but there was a friend who was playing Legion Commander. He'll probably know after he listens to this. And he went his Blink Dagger. Good. Good, solid first big item. Then went for Desolator. This was after your team was just rampaging through them, destroying them. In my opinion, a Black Bar would have served him much better for a team fight / feeling more secure, because the other team had 4 crowd controls, all magical. So I was like, all right, Black Bar seems reasonable. But he went for that Desolator right away. And sure enough, in these engagements, he would annihilate one person, pretty much. Okay, great. The rest of the team, though, would slaughter him. And it usually was never worth it, especially because of the net worth advantage and the experience advantage. And it really, things like that allow them to kind of bounce back in the game, because you didn't itemize the way that would allow you to continue your prowess and your strength throughout the entire game. So you kind of have to just play with that chip on your shoulder, like, hey, I'm not invincible, and if I do die, I'm costing my team a lot more than just my death timer and the advantages of the map. I'm also giving them all this experience and all this gold. And the experience nerf wasn't as major as the gold nerf in B, 6.82B. So there's still a lot of experience to be had on top of the gold. So it's something that isn't really thought about a lot, but those levels stack up quick.
Yeah. And I have 2 more anecdotes that are sort of, they just rain on my parade, Jay, of wanting to just love this patch. One was that I was like a Crystal Maiden or something, and I'm a part of a fight, and we win, and I don't know if the offlaner died early or what, but I'm like, oh snap, I got 2 levels from that fight. And I'm going around, I'm looking at everybody else, I'm like, just because I was part of one fight, 2 fights, I'm further ahead in the game than this solo hero as a support that was running around that, or was in a tri-lane, where I really shouldn't have been able to get this kind of experience. It's just winning the team fight is so much more important. Other anecdote that made this super painful, there's a game where the enemy team, they go full tilt. Someone is gunning the courier down the other side of the map. They're just feeding it away, and you're like, oh, this sucks. Well, at least it'll be over quick, right? Nope, not because of Mr. Comeback Mechanic. Huskar's on the other side of the board. Oh. Guess what? People, it's like, I don't know. They just go like, oh, Huskar's at 10% health. I'm Rubik. I'll go man mode. It'll be fine. No. So, of course, Huskar is just able to get like 2 or 3 kills on people because of like one bad fight. And all of a sudden, this game that is just like painful. It was painful to win because of the enemy team tilting. Now we have to like play this 50-minute game when clearly people are just like losing their minds. So it was like I've had wins that have felt wrong. I've had losses that feel awful, and I think I just don't know what to do with them. I don't.
I think what we should do here is give our suggestions, which may not be accurate, because mind you all, the patch literally came out a week ago, and then the nerfs to these changes came out like a couple days ago. So we're still all very involved. It's a changing, evolving thing. But I think you and I have discussed a couple. I'll start with one that we were discussing about things you can do in your pup games if you're struggling still. Like, for me, example, I'm 0-6, guys. So I'll say that before these. Maybe you won't listen to me now. Maybe I should have said that after the things I'm about to say. I've yet to get a win in 6.82 in general. But I think by watching the pro scene, watching my friends play, and taking it all in as observations, I think we can still gather information that will help us increase our chances of winning, if nothing else. So the first thing I want to start with is, as supports, maybe going for more of a durable support will help you later into the game. The reason I say that to start off is there's a lot of cores now in this meta. Cores get things easier. We were talking about how gold and experience is starting to swing in for teams that originally it was a lot more challenging for them to gain these resources. So now that they're able to get these gold and experience a lot easier, these cores have these bigger items, and they're chopping through the weak supports like butter. Sure, why not?
Butter chopping.
Whereas if you go a more durable support, Abaddon, Omni Knight, there's more. Sven. Ones that, obviously can take a couple punches, but still can do an effective job at supporting your team. At least you will be able to contribute later in the game as well. I think another quick thing I wanted to say is maybe shy away from heroes that are all about the early game unless you have a strategy in mind with your team to win around the 25-30 minute mark. Because if you're going to let that game continue into the 50, 60, etc., those early games, like Crystal Main, perfect example. She is all about early game, right? She gives the mana aura. She gives the early slow, the damage, the mobilization. She's great. But late game, she falls off dramatically. She does not contribute much, especially when BKBs are online. So if you're going to use a hero like that, then you better have a death ball / pushing strategy in place. If not, then you may want to consider something else.
Yeah, I think durability, it just in general, is a huge, important thing in this patch. And that's why when you're listing off supports being durable, I'm like, Sven. Sven, I think, is just amazing this patch, even in the support role. Aghanim Scepter, completely ignored. Who cares? You're looking at somebody that has an AoE stun when fighting is really the generator of your golden experience lead. You have an AoE armor aura that's also giving you movement, which is really, I think, the most valuable resource in the game if you're looking for like a, sets are concerned. He also has potential to scale into the late game. You're able to get like your Blink Dagger up on him, and then you can go into like a Mask of Madness, even into something like a Crystallis if you're able to get that kind of gold ahead. As long as you have that initiation tool, you can do whatever you want. And then you have God Strength, so you're guaranteed a certain amount of damage. Of course, the attack speed really helps you out, but even just being able to go off those first couple points for his potential support. I also feel like the ability to sort of control a lane is a lot less important because you can run around and just try to find kills in other lanes if the lane isn't suiting you. So saying that like, oh yeah, but you're melee support, you're just going to be sort of sitting there and blah, blah, blah. Well, then move, smoke, go somewhere else. And I think you'll be hugely successful.
We had a question from Twitter actually this week from LDAB Bunny again. Very Very great questions. I love them. This one was about the Chen and Omni Knight. He was wondering our take on will they be used. Now, obviously, Chen got the really big changes. In particular, the Oghanims allowing him to control Ancients, 1 per rank of his ultimate. So, obviously, he had big changes. Omni Knight, not
armor,
crazy different, but he's still the Omni Knight. So, obviously, I think where he was going with that was these heroes that, like we were saying, durable or have that heal potential to allow them to stay in the fight, help their teammates out. Obviously, Omni Knight is like buff, the buff god. All he's doing is giving you repel, heals, and Guardian Angel, and just going crazy. So, what's your take on that? Do you think they're going to be joining the ranks in these games?
I certainly see some of the potential for both of them. I'm just like looking through some of the numbers. So as far as the pro scene's concerned, Omni Knight 3 games, 2 wins, 1 loss. Chen's rocking the 50%.
All 3 are puppy.
Are they? I didn't even.
These are the questions. I mean, let's be honest.
No, I don't think they are. But the Chen, a game apiece. He's got a win and a loss under his belt. The fact that Omni Knight can basically just give you more duration of staying alive, because like we're saying, having more people there for kills is really important. If you're able to get a fight to hard swing in a direction, like if you're able to like crush it, like you kill everyone and everyone on your team is still alive, that's huge. So I think being able to keep your entire team sustained for a long period of time is a huge benefit. Chen with the Ancients, I mean, I've seen some like marginal success with picking those up, and I see why you would want to get them. Being able to drop the heal is really nice, but I think there are just other heroes I'd like to go for, because I think you also can benefit from being super greedy this patch, because as long as you have the team fight spells to sort of fall back on, really, who cares? You could fight from so far behind, it doesn't matter if you're able to execute a great team fight, right? The TI2 play, right? If you're in like, there's no way they're going to get caught terribly, if you're able to play it right and get the spells to work for you in the right way, especially now, who cares that they were super far ahead? All of a sudden, you're just recuperating a huge part of that difference, which is why I think like Spectre has a lot of potential this patch, because he can just be off on his own and he can dagger into the trees if he has to or whatever, play somewhat safe, but then team fight breaks out. Guess who's there? Spectre haunts in, and he's able to not only participate but be alive because of dispersion through to the end of the fight if his team is victorious. So I think those heroes have potential a lot in being able to keep their team alive, and forcing teams to fight around one another.
I like Darian from the chat also saying that the double rune thing makes, and just heroes in general, with the bottle, just way more successful. Omni Knight obviously benefits extremely from a bottle. I was saying Clockwork when we were going over the patch notes. There's a few in that offlane in particular that really like having that item. And if you have a team that can help you get runes on a consistent basis, you can be a lot more effective in your lane. So, that just adds to it overall. But I agree with you. I don't know. I feel like Chen can be a greedy hero, to be honest. I mean, yes, obviously he's a great pusher, so you can take that tier 1, but you can sit in that jungle as long as your other lanes are doing fine. Get that mech/Oghanims up real quick, and then now that Tinker's no longer a presence against his creeps, get those Ancients hand to Midas, like you said. No longer an issue when you have those Ancients under your belt. He actually will bring a lot more to the table in terms of pushing mid to even late game at that point. And if you build enough items and net worth on him, and even levels, at least he won't get insta-give, so he can get his spells off and do what he needs to do in a team fight.
I think too, it's like this is a perfect patch for CG to hit, because Crimson Guard, because it really, I feel like you can feel the impact of that item quite a bit, just because of the reasons we've been listing, because you want to survive and blah blah blah, you're going to be around together, so you're able to apply the shield to everybody. I actually built one on a Crystal Maiden because I was like,
why not?
I need to live, I need the health, I need that buff to my team to help get us through these fights, and I almost feel like that's what you have to do if you're playing a squishy support. So I think it's really neat to see that item come in, and I think it's a super viable one. And it's nice too that it just like adds value to Vanguard because now there's like a point to it. You know, it transitions into something late. The other thing that I think is really interesting is just sort of looking at some of these heroes that have been getting picked up a lot so far in the patch and that have been really successful. As far as getting picked up, it's, I think, kind of funny that a lot of the heroes that we saw in the last patch, whether it be just for the fact that people don't know what to do yet, or the fact that a lot of them are still really team fight and death ball-y, push high ground oriented. You know, you still have your like Faceless Void, your Death Prophet, Skywrath Mage actually being the most picked hero thus far in the patch with a winning win rate, despite the changes made to him. But heroes like Centaur too, super prevalent. 31 games played, 58% win rate because he's durable, gives you initiation, reflects damage back. It's able to burst people down to try to get them out of the fight.
Let's be honest, no shit button is really nice to have in this beta.
Yeah, and he just feels like a really ideal type of hero for me. Wraith King too, because you have like a second health bar. So, you know, who cares that you die? You're then applying your ultimate debuff to everybody, and then you're coming up and fighting again, whether that's as a core or as a support, because, hey, if he's a support, if he gets a huge gold swing, hey, I already have my Blink Dagger, but yeah, I'll take a Maelstrom off the back of that. I'll take a Mjolnir. I just feel like those heroes are really going to define this patch, the durable ones that have the potential to scale.
I definitely agree. Vengeful Spirit was a very interesting new addition to this meta that has essentially been non-existent in the past couple patches, I feel like. Obviously, when they buffed her, giving her that, I think it's just Vengeance, is that the name of the passive? It's essentially when she dies, she reduces the damage of the hero that killed her until she reses. So obviously in this patch where, I don't even know how to call it, is it feeding at this point? Where allowing yourself to die in order for your gold to be lower in net worth, it is becoming a viable strategy, being even in pro games, which is starting to be a problem. If that's a trend that would continue, I think the developers would see that being an issue, because you shouldn't want to continuously die to eventually get an advantage later in the game. It seems kind of counterintuitive to this game. Like, you want to build up your team, make them stronger, and then eventually crush your opponent by having the bigger strength. Not like, oh, now our net worth disadvantage is 10,000 because Vengeful's died all this time, and this one team fight's going to swing it all for our cores in the late game. You know, but it's kind of interesting also. Obviously, she's a good hero all around, so it's not like that's the one reason she's used, you know. She's got a great CC. She's got the great armor reduction, the damage amplification, and swap is effective against BKB heroes as well as other different targets. So, yeah, she's got a great kit. But it just seems interesting that this kind of allowing yourself to die strategy is working for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, I think especially earlier on, you saw a lot of that. She is like the third most picked hero in this patch.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot of, you are skirmishing a lot. You are, if you wind up having the Vengeance Aura, it's going to help you in the team fight. When you die, it still has an effect. If you're going to be dying, then, I mean, if you're going to be fighting a lot, that chance for death is going to be high. You're also probably the least concerned that you've been in a while with lane control. You can just roam around and try to get kills and get more out of the map that way. So that short attack range that she has isn't really an issue. So being able to run around with the magic missile and provide that CC is, I think, hugely important. And also another thing I think to point out, we're talking about huge durable heroes being prevalent in this patch, but also, as we sort of, I think, talked about early in the beginning of this conversation, was how those really big team fight abilities are just so huge because they can just completely turn the tide of a game. Even if you're behind in gold and experience, if you have a black hole, you have this, and you land a really great one, you have a huge opportunity to get the game back in your control. And Enigma has been a hero that's seen a good amount of play this patch and has been super successful. So having Vengeful Spirit there to swap out, to cancel the black holes on the other side of the board, I think is really I think, a reason for her resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and like we were saying, she scales well in the late game, too, for your team. You know, that damage aura is very nice to have for your whole team, as long as she can survive. Now, granted, she does usually perish rather quickly in team fights, especially if she's on the aggressive with her ultimate or not. But just allowing her to, go out with style, if you will, dying to the right target can really change the rest of the fight. If you, reduce the damage of their hard carry by almost a third or something, or a half late game, that's really going to allow your team to kind of, punish them for it. So she's just a strong hero, and it's just like really, really apparent in this patch, I guess. And it's I'm not frowning upon it too much, because like I said, I like to see new blood in the scene. I like to see new heroes getting their use, and this is definitely one of them who's found her way into this meta and accomplishing a lot with it. It's funny, I was looking at a list of some of her recent wins, and a lot of them seem to have almost no kills, a ton of deaths, and some assists. And it's just kind of what I was banking on there, with allowing yourself to die early, but at least getting something accomplished with it. Not only maybe with positioning, but then the vengeance debuff afterwards.
Yeah, I think a lot of the big heroes last patch, your Faceless Void, your Death Prophet, your Razor, still been really popular, like I said. I think a big part of this too is it's like, why are you, if you're running around, you're getting a lot of kills, you're able to build up a net worth, then you have to sort of be asking yourself, well, how is this helping us achieve the goals in the game as far as the objectives are concerned, with racks particularly? Because if you get all this and then you sort of back off and you're like, well, what do we do now? Maybe we may wait for them to come out and be poorly positioned. Not really going to work. So you have to, I think, if you have heroes, because I still really like Crystal Maiden, I like the change to her too. If you are getting an early game advantage from successful ganks, and you're like, how are we transitioning this to late game? How is this letting us push high ground? Because, your Death Prophet, your Razor are really still giving you the ability to team fight, to do team fight damage, to survive, and to also help you push high ground. And I think that is a big part of why they're still very popular heroes.
Pushing high ground kind of makes or breaks a lot of team compositions now, especially in the pub scene. Going back to that, like you said, and I think I've agreed with, is you can win that early game still. There's no trouble with that. But if you don't have the ability to get into their base and take out the tower siege properly, or at least conduct yourself in a way that won't put yourselves in a compromising position, you could be in a lot of trouble in the late game. And or at least the game's going to get to a late game where you may no longer be able to be as productive and effective as you were previously. We had in our one game that we're going to keep referencing until the day we die, perhaps. We built up this huge advantage for our team, but we had no great sieging tools. So they were able to keep us out with techies and a couple other heroes, and we had to kind of throw our bodies at the base, which in previous patches, pro teams, other teams, they were able to do that. They were able to just go in, try to take the tower and the racks, and if they all wiped, but they got the racks or something, it was usually worth it, because now you're laying up. Nowadays, it may not be worth throwing bodies at towers and racks. You may have to be a lot more cautious about your play, like we were saying, because now you're giving all that experience and gold to the whole team. These heroes are getting these big items they would not have gotten in a previous patch, and that might give them the step they need to come back down and take out your base.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the heroes that was on the enemy team that we wound up losing to was an Invoker, and it really was like no surprise to me as the game went on that's really, I think, was a big part of our the reason we lost. It was just because of the team fight abilities he was able to throw out, and going Quas Exort, he wound up building himself a Mjolnir, and was even able to sort of scale, not as well as other heroes perhaps, but when you consider that he was still able to throw out the tornadoes, able to land the meatballs effectively to do maximum team fight damage, it's like, yeah, if you're able to get the best of both worlds in that regard, then that's definitely a hero you want to be looking for, and even with the Ghost Walk having some survivability. So really opened my eyes up, and I'm still looking through some of these other heroes. Naga Siren, a hero that lets you sort of get the team fight you want.
Yep.
14 picks, 64% win rate. the Sven, as well as Wraith King, 60% win rates, 15 games a pop. The thing that I do find kind of interesting, and I'm curious your thought on the hero that sort of I feel like goes against a lot of the things we've been saying is the fact that Earthshaker has been picked in 16 games, has a 25% win rate. When you consider that this is a hero that's really hailed for his ability to disrupt team fights and do team fight damage, do you have any, not to put you on the spot at all, even a tiny bit?
I have perfect experience with this, actually.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah.
That was literally the hero I played in our game that we're making an example. And yes. I think it actually resonates perfectly. Because I think that's what Earthshaker really does best. He roams amazingly. He's going to give you that nice long-range stun that could also block off heroes and set up kills for your early lanes. He's such a nuisance to deal with, and he kind of puts you ahead. I think that's one of his main strengths. And so he still does that just as effectively as he did before, if not better with that new targeting system we were talking about, how he can't target heroes. I know, big favor for BDLM. Late game, he's still going to get that jump, Echo Slam, massive AoE, right? But I feel like we're taking a lot of his, what he did so well, kind of, it's almost not beneficial anymore to build up that advantage. Or if it is, you need to be able to close out the game. And maybe, I haven't looked into the 16 games really, but it's possible that these games went really in their favor early, as you would expect. And then as the mid to late roll around, and they weren't able to siege properly, or they threw some kills away, he kind of falls off except for that Echo Slam. That's really all he's got late game. And yes, I agree, he will disrupt the fights in a way, but these other supports that we're naming off, Vengeful, Skyrath still, Sven possibly, Wraith King, these durable or really effective long-range heroes can seem to just maybe get more effectiveness in these later team fights, and therefore, he's just fallen off because of that.
I think it almost goes back to again to like how some of these heroes are able to scale, and I think you think Arcane Boots, and you go Blink Dagger, and then you go, well, maybe I'll go like a Force Staff, or I'll go some of these other utility items, and so you wind up, maybe being able to land the Fissure, and you land your Echo Slam, and I think those are great abilities, and they can certainly open up a lot of doors for you, but at a certain point, that's just kind of, you're done after that. So, I mean, maybe you have to look to build like a Crimson Guard on your Earthshaker, so you go like, okay, well, we're getting more durability out of them. You last longer in these fights, or you go for the Heart, because that'll give you more strength, that gives you durability, and if you get an Enchant Totem swing off, you're going to do a nice chunk of damage because of the strength you get with that. It's just really interesting to talk about the metas like, yeah, you can roam around, you can move more, you don't have to feel so constricted to these lanes. You're like, oh, perfect for Shaker and the big team fight abilities, and then he winds up not having a whole lot of success yet. Yeah,
and I feel like with Earthshaker, especially, at least in my experience, is you like to give him the gold and experience to get, obviously, his ultimate, but also to get Blink Dagger, kind of like a Sand King in a way, where if he likes to get that Blink Dagger real quick, but after the Blink Dagger, a lot of times teams are comfortable with just not like saying, all right, that's your item. You have that now. So we're going to take back the farm and take back the lanes for experience. I know personally in that game, after I got my Blink Dagger, I was pretty poor. I wasn't getting really levels anymore. I was just focused on blinking, fissuring, and I was trying to be a presence on the map, which he does really well. But then you really don't gain the opportunities to continue ramping up. So while you're saying these items that sound really nice in theory, the Crimson Guard, the Heart, it seems in a lot of games he's not going to have a lot of situations where he's going to have the room to farm these up. You're going to want him to be where the action is at all times because of his disruption abilities. So in theory it sounds good, but I just am not sure it's reasonable.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you there. The only other thing I thought was really interesting was just happened to catch a lot of Visage Drow games, and it was really kind of strange how effective they seem to be, even in the games where Drow would fall behind. She's actually 8 games played, 5-3, just because of like the amount of damage that they're able to do together. So the the gimmick is you have the aura from Drow Ranger, and you're able to apply it to the birds, and the birds hit like trucks, and you can get 3 of them once you get the Aghanim Scepter. I really do like the Visage because of the fact that you're getting the AoE stuns off on the birds. The birds are able to do the damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of get a scaling into late game. Also, the ability to siege towers with the birds with the amplification from Drow Ranger. And I don't think I have to explain why Drow can transition into the late game. So
the best part, Isama has 0 games of those 8.
That is
other teams
true.
Picking up this combination. It was like mostly Isama for what we knew in the past. I mean, other teams did it, but he hasn't even been one of the teams. C9 hasn't even run this yet. So it's just a thing that's kind of always been there, but like you said, really even stepping up to the plate. 8 games is not a ton, but it's not bad. That's actually a decent chunk. And it is really interesting to see her getting used like that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we've been going a while, man, and I think this is probably just the beginning of a larger conversation. As we sort of get further into the patch, we look at some of these heroes, like we mentioned, some of the core heroes that are still seeing a lot of play, and we can understand why they're still getting picked. Really, going back to Faceless and Death Prophet, really not enjoying that great of a win rate, and the Razor as well. All 3 of those heroes are under 50%. So curious to see if there's limited success is going to switch how often they get picked. Really, I think there's going to be a lot of changing. It's going to be interesting to see how this change and this addition of the comeback mechanic really sort of affects the game as a whole. And we want you guys to come by and tell us what you think. You can stop by DotaOnDemand.com. You can participate in the poll question, which will be, what do you think about the comeback mechanic? Think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Are you not sure yet? So stop by, tell us what you think. You're welcome to, of course, drop by the facebook.com/DotaOnDemand. You're welcome to go into the comments of the videos, or you can even come just by the website and post underneath the post of this episode. Tell us what you think about this or even anything else about the patch. Have anything else to add, my friends?
Stay frosty, my friends.
Yes, stay frosty. Also, if you still have no idea who Roro is, you need to check him out. He's going to be on one of our future episodes. And go out there, get some backstory on the man. Figure out what it is he does. Go check out Simply Dota. Really great, interesting guides. Check them out so you'll prepared for when he's on the show next time. So go out there, guys. Play some Rubber Band Dota. Watch some Rubber Band Dota. See you next time.